Well, hello, hello. It's Jamie from Not So Wimpy Teacher. And I'm really excited to be here. Thank you, Brittany, for putting this all together and excited to chat with you about lesson planning in half the time. So if you guys can, if you're watching, if you can comment and tell me you're here, because I'm not used to this particular platform, but I'd love to chat with you more about lesson planning in half the time. I just want to know that it's all working. Okay. All right. Brittany, I'm not seeing any comments on my end, so just want to make sure everything is working smoothly. Hi, Vicki. Vicki, I can see your comment. Thank you. All right. Well, Vicki and I, we can chat a little bit, but I'm really very, very passionate about, and I know Brittany is too, but I am very, very passionate about helping teachers to do the really important work that they do while also enjoying guilt-free time with their family, their hobbies, their church, their whatever makes you happy outside of the classroom. And I know that not everyone believes it's possible, and I didn't for a while either, until I put together some better routines, some better procedures. So I started looking at the things that were taking a ton of time, and I started to ask myself, how could I do this just as well? Like, I want high quality work, but how can I do it faster? How can I get that high quality work at a quicker work session? And that's when I started to batch my lesson plan. So if you watched my session about lesson planning in half the time, tip number one is to batch your lesson plans. And I feel like in life, the more that if you do something all the time, the more you can learn to just batch a lot of something so that you don't have to do it over and over again. It's kind of like laundry. You don't want to wash your outfit. My grandma used to do this. So when I'd stay at her house, I would take my dirty clothes at night and put them in the hamper. She would wash them that night and bring them back to me in the morning. Who has time for that? You want to make sure that you just batch. You do a whole load of laundry instead of one outfit every day. You're going to do a load of laundry. I have 6 kids, so we have to do a load or 2 every single day. But you want to do a lot at once. It saves you time because you spend time getting out materials. You spend time just getting your brain to even get started. So Vicki says she batches her meals. And I used to do that too, Vicki. I used to do something called once a month cooking, where on one day out of the month, like a weekend, my husband and I would get a babysitter and we would cook a whole bunch of our favorite foods, and then we would freeze them, whether it was like sauces for pastas or they were casseroles, even mashed potatoes. We would make them all and then we'd freeze them so that we could just warm them up when we got home from work. And that's called batching. It's like doing a lot of one thing at one time so that you don't have to keep doing it over and over again. And it works really well with lesson planning too, because we know we're going to need lesson plans every single day. Now, most of you probably do a week batch. And that's a good start, because if you are lesson planning by the day, which happens usually around May, you realize that you're sort of lesson planning for tomorrow. And that's like you're at this spot in the year where you're just barely making it. That happens to all of us. But in general, you're probably doing about a week of batching, right? 1 week of your reading, writing, math, science, or studies plans. That's pretty typical that teachers maybe Sunday night are putting together the plans for the following week. But I realized that I could save even more time if I created batches of 4 or 5 weeks of lessons for a subject, so that I didn't have to come back and think about it every single week. And I didn't have to get out the textbook every week, the pacing guide, the websites, the worksheets, whatever there was that you needed for lesson planning. I didn't have to get them out every week. I could sit down one time and think very deeply about math and what my students needed to learn next in math and what my students needed as far as supports for math. And my brain got into this zone. And at first, you would look at your lesson planning template and it would be like empty boxes. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, what do I do? This is going to be hard. But you start filling in Monday, you start filling in Tuesday. By the time you get to the Wednesday box, like, okay, this is going fast, and you keep filling them in. And then you stop at Friday and you're like, oh, mass planned. I got to move on to reading. And you start that whole process over again where it's hard. You have to get out new materials. You have to start over. You have to convince your brain to keep going and not just like go scroll Instagram. So that's hard. But I realized if I just stayed doing math, that I could go much faster than if I started a new subject. And that's when it really hit me that it could get 5 weeks of one subject planned faster than 1 week of 5 subjects. And so it's if you've never batched lesson plans, it can sound so crazy at first. And so I challenge you to give it a go, even if it sounds a little bit crazy. Vicki says she's excited about the idea because I think it might be able to follow my state framework. Yeah, I feel like if you have some kind of pacing guide, some kind of framework to use, that's going to make your lesson planning actually a little bit faster, right? Because you don't have to make the decisions like, how long should we spend teaching fractions? If you can get to the point where it's like, you have a guide and it tells you exactly how long to spend on fractions, then that's one less decision you have to make. And I often think of pacing guides as actually batching your decision making. So we have to batch, or we have to make a lot of decisions. We're always making decisions like, how long do I spend on compare and contrast? How long do I spend on fractions? How long do we spend on this World War I unit? Whatever it might be. But if you sit down to make a pacing guide, you're like, I'm going to make all these decisions right now in this half-hour sitting or this hour sitting, instead of having to make them every single week. It makes it faster. You make all the decisions. It does not mean you never change your pacing guide. Those of you who use pacing guides, it doesn't mean that you won't ever make changes to your pacing guide, because I think, as with all things with teaching, you got to be ready to pivot. You got to be ready to edit. But I've always said, if you have something to start with, it's easier to make changes than if you start from zero and have to figure it out every single week, every single day. We always want to just like, if we already have it all outlined, it's easy to add one lesson or to extend one lesson by a day than it is to start every single week from zero. Every time your head sees empty space, it thinks that's a lot of work. And as soon as your brain thinks that, it offers you up a lot of excuses. Like, you don't have time to do this right now. You'll never get this done. Maybe you should just scroll Instagram. Maybe you need to go tell your teacher bestie about your day. Maybe you should just go watch your favorite TV show. And like, oh man, that sounds way better to your brain. That sounds easier. When things sound hard, our brain procrastinates, and it's very normal. It's very human. So I feel like when I batch and I get to see all of this work done in front of me, my brain's like, whoa, you've already done so much. And when you experience that joy of finishing your batch, you experience it a few different times, your brain starts to really enjoy that. And your brain does like to do more of the things that give it pleasure. And yeah, Vicki's right. You'll never know when something unexpected is going to come up. It will come up. You might get ill, or one of your children are ill and you need to miss a day. I love having batched lesson plans, because I don't ever feel like when I was making sub plans, I never felt like I was starting from zero. I was using my lesson plan for the day and just adding my more detailed directions for substitutes. And this is like a tip from the book. We didn't talk about sub plans in the lesson planning session, but I want you to get an extra tidbit here. The best thing I did for sub plans, you're going to need them. At the beginning of your year, and I know it's hard, but schedule it on your calendar to go ahead and write out in detail your usual schedule or routine for each day. Because I found that every day was slightly different. Like on Monday, we had to pass out spelling words, but I wouldn't put that on Wednesday, So every day was a little bit different, but there were routines for each day. And so I took the time and I wrote out my Monday plan. Now, I don't know exactly which page we're going to be on in math or exactly which book we're going to read in reading, but it can still say things like read aloud. And it can still say things like, we're going to do the next math lesson. And it gives the amount of time you usually spend on things. And when you pass things out and your usual routines, write in so much detail, like a perfect stranger needs to know this, and save them by date. So it's like sub plans Monday, sub plans Tuesday, sub plans Wednesday. When you're absent or you need to be absent, you're like, what day is it? It's Thursday. Pull up that template. Now you just need to add in the specifics, like which the math lesson, you can cut and paste that from your original lesson plans, which book you're reading aloud and where to find it. type that in. But you already have like a ton written. So you have a lot going for you. It's going to be a lot faster. I never want a teacher to say, like, I didn't take my time off because it would have taken too long to write the sub plan. So I'd rather go to work sick. I hate when teachers feel that. I have felt it before. And I hate when teachers can't take care of themselves because they're worried about how much work it would cause. It's a bum deal about being a teacher because there aren't other professions where you have to plan every minute of when you're gone. But I want to make it easier. And I want you to think like, how could I make this easier? It's a really fantastic question to ask your brain about something that's taking you a lot of time, something that you're not enjoying. It's just asking, how could I make this easier? And allow yourself quiet time to listen to some of the answers your brain will offer up. At first, it'll say you can't. It's telling you that now, even as you hear me saying it, it's like, I can't make it easier. But challenge your brain, say, oh, but what if you could? What would it look like if this was easier? That's where I came up with batching for lesson plans. Was I kept asking my brain, what would lesson planning look like if it were easier? So ask yourself these questions and be open to it. Oh my gosh, Vicki said they had trouble finding subs. They had to have the custodian covering classes last year. I don't know which state you're in, Vicki, but yes, sadly, very relatable. If you had any questions about my session or something you read in my book, feel free to stick it in the chat because I'm happy to answer it for you. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep telling you some little tips and things that maybe I didn't get to include in the session because time was limited. So, but if you have a specific question, stick it in there. I'd love to chat about it. Besides batching, I think the next best thing you can do for your lesson plans is having a routine. I don't know about you, but early on, I truly felt that I needed to make every day different, exciting. That's the only way my students would love school. And I did all these amazing activities that were so much fun. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do fun activities, but it was every day, every subject I felt like I had to entertain. And then it just really occurred to me how important routines are and how I thrive on routines. If the principal walked in every day and was saying, hey, we've changed your schedule up. Now we moved your recess, we moved your specials, like how much that would upset me. But I was often changing the routines of my students. So when you get to having really fabulous routines, your lesson planning is going to speed up significantly. The name of my book is How to Love Teaching Again. And it is truly a book of time-saving strategies to help you to avoid burnout. It was just everything that I used in the classroom to help me to truly fall in love with the profession without losing who I am as a person outside of the classroom. As far as routines, I got to the point where if you walked in on Monday during grammar, you would always see the same thing. If you walked in on Tuesday during grammar, always see the same thing. And I did this with my subjects. And this made lesson planning so simple. So every Tuesday I did an interactive notebook activity in grammar. I went ahead and typed that into my lesson plan template and saved it for the whole year. So I never had to type out what I was going to do in grammar for any Tuesday. And then for Wednesday, we always do this writing activity. So I wrote that in. And all of a sudden, my grammar was planned for the year. The only thing I had to do each week was type out which scale, like nouns, verbs, adjectives. That's all I had to do. And I had a pacing guide to tell me that. So that was really fast. Then I started going, okay, this is really great. How can I do this with other subjects too? And then boom, you start saving everything that is repetitive, everything that's routine onto the template. And now when I go to lesson plan, when I would go to lesson plan, the boxes weren't blank. So my brain wasn't immediately saying, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. In fact, my brain was like, wow, this is almost done. This is going to be easy, which really makes the batching and the lesson planning experience a little bit easier to do. So routines will make the batching process significantly faster. It also just will save you a whole bunch of prep time because all those new activities, like I was addicted to Pinterest. I'm like a recovering Pinterest addict. And I truly was. I was so addicted. Like I was on there every day searching for the next new thing because I always wanted to be doing the next new thing because I thought that's what will make me such a great teacher. It's not what makes you a great teacher. Adding fun is great when you have the capacity to do so. You sprinkle it in. I didn't have the capacity and I wasn't sprinkling. So it was too much for me. It was too much for my students, but I would have to print out whatever I found on Pinterest. I'd have to read all the directions, prepare it. Maybe I was laminating, cutting, coloring, who knows what. Then during class, I'd have to take time to teach my students how to be successful doing that activity. And so that took class time. It took personal time. And I know you don't have extra of either. And so I always think of those extra activities as like, I'm going to batch my lesson plans. I'm going to keep them super routine. By doing so, I'm going to save some time. And when I have saved some pockets of time, I will use some of them to work on a fun activity that we're going to do at the end of a unit, or a fun activity we're going to do for a particular holiday. Instead of like everything always has to be different, amazing, and there's always a transformation room and all these things. Instead, I started to think about how I could make the everyday routine enough that I could plan it faster so that we could have something special occasionally. And that helped me to not be trading in my personal time for the fun in the classroom. And the reality was that my students appreciated the routines so much that actually when I'd sprinkle in the extras, they'd be like, wait. This isn't what we do, because they know how to be successful with routines and they come to really appreciate them. And so I didn't find that my students lost engagement at all. I actually found that they understood how to be successful, which made them feel more confident and less anxious, which was so important to me in the classroom. But okay, thank you for asking about my book. Thank you, Brittany, for sharing the title of the book. It was such an honor to get to write the book. It's been such an honor to get to talk to teachers about the book. And I feel like I've been doing this for 3 years. Like, this book is like my 3-year pet project, and it has been so exciting to get to see it finally out in teachers' hands where I really wanted it to be. Caroline says, I'm a list maker, and your chapter on Ditch the To-Do List really resonated with me. Yeah, Caroline, I am a crazy list maker, and I'm still working on like my not making just a whole bunch of random to-do lists. It's hard to get out of the habit. So don't feel bad. Give yourself a little grace if it takes some time practicing. If you haven't read my book, I have a whole chapter called Ditch the To-Do List, which confuses teachers, because whenever I talk to teachers, they're like, I have 100 to-do lists. And you probably do like have a Post-it note like on your computer, and maybe got a note in like the cool notebook where you thought you were going to put all your notes, and you got like 5 or 6 on your phone, and maybe even got a couple in the car. I have a notebook that you can write on in the shower, because I would come up with things I needed to do in the shower. So like I have to-do lists absolutely everywhere. But the thing about to-do lists is that they set you up for failure. You've already told your brain, this is a to-do list. You need to do it to be successful. Do you ever finish your to-do list? Because if you are, congrats, because I was never finishing all the to-do lists. I was usually adding things to do the to-do list faster than I could ever cross them out. There's only so much time in a day. And I knew I couldn't finish the to-do list, yet my brain, every time I didn't finish it, was like, you weren't very successful. Look at all the things you didn't cross out. I started to reevaluate how I wanted to prioritize my time. If I know I'm not going to finish everything on the to-do list, then I want to make sure that I get the things that are the most important done. Instead of what I would do is I'd look at the to-do list and I'd pick the easiest thing, because I'm tired. I think I'll just do this easy one. I'll do the hard stuff later. Later came, and later was hard when I didn't have the grading done and lesson plans and stuff. And I would get those like Sunday anxiety because I didn't have stuff done. So instead, I do a brain dump. A brain dump's different than a to-do list, because you can already tell your brain, you're not going to do all of this. It's not a to-do list. You're not going to do it all. The brain dump is just get all of the things you think you need to do out of your head. And then you can look at that list and actually start to ask yourself, which ones do I really need to do? Because your brain's gonna tell you a bunch of stuff. Like, I saw this thing on TikTok, so I need to do that. And my coworker is doing this, so I got to do that too. And your brain starts to think you need to do all of those things. And so I would brain dump, and then I would ask myself, which of these items would there be a negative consequence if I don't do next week? Because those are the ones I need to really prioritize. If report cards are due, then finishing your report cards There's going to be a negative consequence if you don't do that. If you have an IEP meeting, there's a negative consequence if you don't show up. So I would go ahead and circle the items where there is very literally a negative consequence if you don't do it. And you really have to ask your brain, are you sure? Because your brain will try to tell you like, oh, if you don't change out that bulletin board, it's going to drive you crazy. So that's a negative consequence. But you really have to ask yourself again, like, wait. Is there really a negative consequence to this? We want to start with those high priority items. Now you're going to take it to your calendar, not a list. A list doesn't say when it's going to get done. You're going to go to your calendar and you're going to break up these high priority tasks into small tasks, mini tasks, micro tasks, whatever you want to call them. You're going to go ahead and schedule for completion, not what you're going to work on, like work on report cards. If you just write work on report cards, then if it's not finished, your brain doesn't know if it should celebrate or not. Your brain's like, oh, you didn't finish, so I don't think you were very productive today. But if you knew you weren't going to finish all the report cards in 30 minutes and you only had 30 minutes to work, then you set yourself up for failure. So what if you put in that 30 minutes, finish 5 report cards? Now it's like exactly what you're going to do. From 3:30 to 4, I'm going to finish 5 report cards. And if at the end of that half hour you finish those 5 report cards, maybe even finish 6, your brain's like, whoa, you're on fire. So it's breaking it up into the small enough tasks that you can finish it during your time slot. And you're putting things in very specific time slots. So that lesson planning that you were batching, I had a time slot on my calendar when I was going to batch and what I was going to finish during that time slot. So as you go to your calendar and you fill things in, you're really putting on your calendar what you will complete. So then you have to get very picky about what's on that list. The high priority items get calendared. If there's more time left on your calendar, you can go back and pick more items off your list. But if there isn't more time, then you can delete items from your list. You could delegate things to others. You might have to just delay. I call those like the triple D. You're going to have to delete, delay, or delegate some items because they don't fit on your calendar. And you knew when you brain dumped, you're like, this isn't everything I'm going to do because I know that I can't do them all. When I do these brain dumps, I actually include personal and work together because my brain has a hard time differentiating between the two. It's when I ask it, like, what do I need to do this week? It offers up both. So I just put them both on the paper. And I go ahead and calendar. I try to calendar even some of my personal to-dos, like especially if you have like a closet that you need to get cleaned out. If I don't put it on the calendar, like make a meeting with myself to get it done, I probably won't. But remember, you can make it into a micro task, like clean out the shirts from 5 to 6 or whatever. And another day you might put clean out the pants. You have to also decide how your brain works, because I would have trouble going back multiple times. So I'd rather schedule a longer period of time and get more done, but you might do better at minute tasks once a day. And it's about testing and seeing how your brain works. But yeah, ditch the to-do list, replace it with a to-done list. Every Friday, write what you completed this week instead of hemming and hawing over what you didn't get done. Let's celebrate what you did do. We call this the not so wimpy wins. And we celebrate every Friday. Like, what did we do? What do we get to celebrate? What did we complete? What aha moments do we have? How did we make a difference? And a to-done is so much better than a to-do list. So, Caroline, I'm glad that chapter resonated with you. It was one of my favorites to write because even though I'm not in the classroom anymore, I still work really hard to ditch the to-do list and use my calendar. I have a calendar with all of the time slots by half hours. You can always use Google Calendar too. I like that because you always have it with you on your phone. So if you have to add something last minute, like a doctor appointment or something, it's easy to do. So really fun chapter. And I think when teachers see ditch the to-do list, they're like, what kind of book is this? I can't ditch the to-do list. I only have a couple more minutes. If there's any specific questions anyone wants me to answer, I am happy to do so. But I did want to thank Brittany for all her very hard work putting together this event. It is more work than most people realize to coordinate the tech and the people. So thank you so much for coordinating, Brittany, and for including me and all of your other presenters. It is an honor. And thank you to the teachers who listened to my session or came to listen to the Q&A or read my book. It means a lot to me that I got to be a little bit of a part of your day and maybe a part of your classroom next year. It's always an honor. So I did want to say that, but if there is any specific question I can answer before I head off, happy to do so. You're welcome. You're super welcome. I haven't done a live like this in so long, but we used to do these all of the time. And so it's really cool to go back to the roots. So all right. Well, I am going to say you're welcome. You're very welcome, Vicki. I want to say good night and enjoy the rest of your sessions and the upcoming new school year. Good luck.